Welcome back. We're going to request a search of Nash Skulkin now. Mainly because I believe he has the disc. I believe it was planted there by one Mr. Tobias Gregson when he secretly got it from Ashley Graydon. It's like, he's very much wanting us to search him and then the trial will be over. It'll all be sorted. It's like, no, mate. You had that little scuffle with Nash and that's where it is now. So,
take that!
Of, my lord, Mr. Nash Skulkin. Oh, I never. Yeah, blimey. Me? Him? Very well then, bailiff. Restrain the witness and conduct a thorough search of his personal effects.
Hold it!
Please, my lord. Inspector? Scotland Yard, has to object to this search.
Objection!
Unfortunately for you, Inspector, your objections carry no weight here. Eh? In this courtroom, only the prosecution and the defense have the authority to object. But Lord Van Zykes, I have no idea what forces are in play that might influence your actions. But personally, I have no intention of obstructing the course of this trial. Bailiff, carry out the search. Now, hold on a mo. I don't know nothing. Nothing about no disc. Cut it out. Yo, mate. Oh, hiya. Yeah, my lord. In the witness's pocket. I found this. Good lord. That's another music box disc. I don't know nothing about it, nothing. That is the second music box disc left behind by Magnus McGilded. Is it not, Inspector Gregson? Oh my. Oda, Mr. Skulkin. What have you to say for yourself? Gordon Bennett, I mean just Gordon Flaming Bennett. I swear I didn't do nothing, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing about that disc, honest to God. Counsel, would you please explain what exactly is going on here? The alleged deal that was struck was between this witness and this detective, no? Without question, my lord. Then, for pity's sake, why on earth was this man in possession of the disc that the inspector traded for information? Inspector Gregson is a shrewd, calculating man who rarely loses his composure. But at one particular point in this trial, he exhibited some unusual behavior for a brief moment. I don't recall. What unusual behavior? It was, yes, during my cross-examination of Mr. Graydon. Tell me, Mr. Graydon, when you left the pawnbrokery that night, was it by any chance the second disc in your jacket pocket? I admit to nothing of the sort. Well, Mr. Graydon answered my questions. The inspector appeared to have grabbed Nash Skulkin by his coat and was shaking him violently. Yeah, he didn't know. Thought me noggin was gonna fall off, I did. I was wishing I had been born as me brother I was. And what exactly happened to make the detective attack you like that? I ain't got a clue. He suddenly turned and grabbed me a whistle like started shaking me. Why the blazes didn't you mention the third gun when we had got you down the station? That's what he said. He held it right down my ear, all he did. And the head's still throbbing now. The way the detective behaved then was extremely out of character. But looking back now, it must have been then that he did it. That was the opportunity Inspector Gregson created for himself in order to hide the disc. Oh, bless my wig. He hid it? Phew. I'm afraid I fail to comprehend the motive here. If the detective had acquired the disc he was after, why on earth would He then proceeded to hide it in another man's pocket. This is a court of law. He could have submitted the item as evidence. It would appear, my lord, that the inspector was not at liberty to do that. Why ever not? As the man himself revealed earlier, his current assignment has some special conditions. My orders were, recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry, and do it on the QT. Strictly hush-hush. Hush-hush? Top secret assignment, is it? As far as we are aware, the information stolen comes from confidential government communications. It would seem that if the information were to be revealed in court as evidence, it would be problematic. Does that sum up the situation, Inspector? I'm operating under direct orders from the Ministry. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to answer that question. So, realizing there was a chance that you may be searched here in court, we took steps to hide the disk you had acquired from the witness. Ah, does this mean... He only pretended to attack Mr. Skulkin in order to get close enough to him, to slip the second disc into his pocket. So it was all a pretense. Now, Inspector Gregson. And you, Mr. Graydon? Are you prepared to admit the accusation made against you of this alleged deal? Admit to it. Yours truly. Please. Mr. Graydon. Clearly our Eastern visitor has an uncommonly active imagination. However, there's no proof that I passed that disc to the inspector.
Objection!
But then, how do you explain the reason why you knew about the peephole? I'm under no obligation to explain. What? Yes, I lied in my testimony. That I admit, so sentence me accordingly. That is all I admit. Murder? Leaking government secrets? Striking a deal with a detective? All of this is the young Eastern man's fancy. I have no idea what any of this is about. You... What? Oh dear. Well, what about you then, Inspector Gregson? Do you admit to making a deal with Mr. Graydon in order to acquire the disc? Ladies and gents of the jury, as a Scotland Yard inspector, I will declare this and nothing more. I am acting in the best interest of the country. Whatever I've done, it's been in the name of justice. So, as members of the public of this fine country, I'd like to think that justice will be your guiding light when you're making your decisions. This is quite a quandary indeed. Rarely have I encountered such extraordinary tumultuousness in the concluding of a trial. Nevertheless, in the absence of any further evidence to be presented, I believe it is time that we put the matter to the jury for their final leanings. Now, as a fellow servant of Queen and country, I must say I sympathize with the old inspector. Yes, he's a dependable man, I'm quite sure. In service, one becomes a good judge of character. Even crossing your eyes doesn't help when it comes to looking at this case. It's all blurred to me. Well, as a fellow professional, I'd like to put my faith in the detective, really. Graydon is highly skilled operator. Stop. Currently in presence of idol. Stop. Detective has very much trust in eyes. More than this, I cannot say. Don't believe it. These 6 jurors are going to believe Gregson? They declare his decision now. Is Ginny going to be found guilty? If I don't manage to produce some definitive evidence right now, then we're going to lose. I have some proof that Graydon killed Mr. Windybank, stole those government secrets. Or some evidence to force Gregson into admitting that he struck a deal. witness. Well then, counsel, I think it's time I impose on the jurors to declare their final decisions, no? That is, unless you have some compelling evidence you have thus far not presented to the court. But the only thing I can think of is, like, can we play both music discs? Will that make them stir? And be like, whoa, 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 whoa! If I let the judge call on the jurors to announce their leanings, Gina will be found guilty. So there's no choice then, Bruno. You have to throw some more evidence at them. This is it now. It all comes down to this. Who do I present evidence against, Gregson or Graydon? Ooh. I'm gonna go Gregson. With the idea of trying to play the music. Inspector Gregson, well, you know, the tunes. Inspector Gregson, there's one final piece of evidence I would like you to see. What's that then? If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with the witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly. Well, go on. This is my last chance. Looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get this detective to admit to the deal he clearly struck with Graydon. Oh, did I not get the other music box disc? Oh, that was going to be my point. I still want to go with that logic, so... That one thing that I want to try and, like, point towards, can we play the other disc? Because that'll get him being like, whoa, whoa, mate, whoa, so...
Take that!
Is that Mr. McGilding's peculiar music box, counsel? Yes. With a disc already in place, ready to play. I think perhaps now would be a good time to listen to the sound produced by the music box again. Only this time... Say it. With the other disc, with the second disc we just discovered set in place as well, yes! Goodness, this disc, counsel!
Hold it!
No, wait, can't let you do that? Why not? Because because it's got nothing to do with this case. That's why.
Objection!
Not true, Inspector. The defense has already proposed that the sounds heard by the court earlier from this music box were part of a Morse code message. We know that Morse code comprises of two distinct tones. The defense believes that the second disc contains the second tone needed to complete the message. And now we have a chance to confirm that theory. You're crying out loud, Sunshine. We're talking about state secrets here. You go letting the whole courtroom hear confidential information like that. It's treason. Then do you admit the charge? That in order to protect those state secrets, you engaged in unlawful dealings with the witness? You're mad. You let that secret information out into the public domain. You're making an enemy of the entire British government, you idiot.
Objection!
Let's not forget, Inspector, that you, a Scotland Yard officer, leak confidential case details to a witness. That you continue to lie in court, and all because, by fair means or foul, you're determined to do your duty. Well, by fair means or foul, I'm prepared to do mine. Don't you dare. I will stop at nothing to protect my client. I don't care who I make an enemy of. He's going to respect that, isn't he? That's going to be like, yes. My lord, if you please. The court must hear the sounds made by the music box. Come on, Van Zykes, for Pete's sake. Stop him.
Objection!
Boot. Inspector, you should know my methods by now. I'm a prosecutor. I'm no Scotland Yard puppet. In this courtroom, my duty is to the law. So let me propose a toast to uncovering the truth by fair means or foul. Oh my. Very well, the defense stands here and that of the prosecution has been made very clear, I feel. Therefore, in accordance with the defense's request, the court will now listen as this music box is set in operation once more. This time, with the second disc in place and both discs playing simultaneously. Oh dear. Oh, listen to that. It's unmistakable now. It's Morse code. Alright, I admit it, whatever you want. For the love of God, shut that blooming box up. Oh dear, oh dear. Let me ask you again then, Inspector Gregson. Did you, or did you not, strike a deal with the witness next to you in the stand? Specifically, did you furnish the witness with confidential case details in exchange for this music box disc? Did you reveal the existence of the peephole in the pawnbroker's storeroom door, Inspector? I did. Stop. What are you doing, man? It's all exactly like the young Eastern lawyer said. When the trial resumed after the recess, and we were stood here in the stand together. And that's when he approached me with the deal. Shut up, you imbecile. Shut up! Just you there. You're the detective who turned up at the pawnbroker the other day, aren't you? I may have something you're looking for, Inspector. With me at this very moment. But how about a trade? I suggest you accept. Or information that may make certain individuals uncomfortable will soon become very public indeed. I couldn't let that information become public knowledge, not under any circumstances. So I accepted the man's proposal and told him the details about the case that should have put him in the clear. The peephole in the storeroom door and the bloodstains on the overcoat. By giving false testimony, this witness intended to have the defendant wrongly accused of murder. Inspector, you knew that. Yet you still revealed those details to facilitate the witness's perjury. I did. But then it turned out the peephole had only been made that night after the incident took place. Scotland Yard wasn't aware of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Well, Mr. Graydon, what do you have to say for yourself? There's nothing and no one left for you to hide behind. You struck a deal with the inspector in order to escape conviction of a very serious crime. Namely this. You are the third intruder who broke into the pawnbroker on the night in question. And you perpetrated the murder of the proprietor, Mr. Pop Windybank. You. Oh, bloody hell. Traitor! I mean, it can just snap now. The other two just scarpered. Bailiff! Bailiff! Restrain that man. At once. That's it then. It's all over. I despised my life growing up. Those slums are vile places. I was cursed from birth, born into poverty, the son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day long. What little money they had was never spent on me. So I set about studying, to better myself, to one day escape from that hellhole. And you eventually became a communications officer. I admire your determination. Then you decided to try to sell government secrets. Why? Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out with more money than anyone who lived in that squalor could ever imagine. Then one day, I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded. You're a fiend with a queer talent. So you are. I have money to throw your way if you're interested. And you need do, or all you need do, jeez, is go along with my little plan now. I was to steal the Ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. And I was responsible for inspections of the Ministry's communications officer. It was a simple enough task. The lure of the devil's offerings, how easy it is to succumb. But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you were committing. And for that reason, I took great lengths to ensure that my actions were untraceable. By using the music box. My father was a brickmaker, though my mother divorced him when I was still a child. Yes, Mr. Mason Milverton. That's right. He was very skilled with his hands. He'd once been a music box maker apprentice. Imagined his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that could generate Morse code. So I sought out my father again, to employ his services. It was the first time I'd seen him since I left the slums 10 years earlier. Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gent you've become, eh? He was a different man to the one in my memory. Thin, frail old man. Poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I'm sure that he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason. So I made up a story. Some work for you, father, and some music box discs made. Music box discs, eh? A musician's friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I brought the score with me. There are two, actually. Be delighted, son. It's been 20 years since I did any work like this, though. Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft. That's how I had him make the two discs. Thereby splitting the information in two, you were taking considerable precautions indeed. It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant that I could deal with McGilded in two separate transactions. First involved the first of the two discs and the music box for playing them. Exchanged them with McGilded for 10 guineas. And then, on receipt of the second disc, he would pay 1,000 guineas. So, what happened on the omnibus 2 months ago? Was the second part of the deal, the exchange of the second disc. Yes. I'd sold the man information that way a number of times already. It seems he became reluctant to part with his money. That doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graydon. But why was it that, on the omnibus 2 months ago, your father, Mr. Milverton, was the one dealing with Mr. McGilded and not yourself? When I received 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved in something dubious. When he did, he said to me, "Next time there's an exchange, you'll let your old man do it, understand? Otherwise, I won't take your money anymore." That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, and take the money from McGilded. That's it. An idea what he was actually on the disc I'd asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I'll never know why everything went so horribly wrong that night. All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It was only then that I found out what sort of a monster McGilded really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore my father's name. To exact revenge. You burnt the omnibus. Revenge? As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man will no doubt be able to imagine, McGilded brought all his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways. To crush any semblance of justice in his trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. The trial 2 months ago was a farce from start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then. I walked into that hornet's nest completely unaware of the sinister background to it all. And I had made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGilded by then, so I spared nothing in my arrangements 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in this city willing to do anything you ask. McGilded himself had shown me that. Are you saying that... I think you have the picture now. After he twisted everything to his favor in this courtroom to ensure that he walked free, I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice that monster deserved. That tragic accident following the trial here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGilded's death that day was caused by this man? Everything is ready, sir. If you'd like to follow me into the courtroom. What's this, officer? Just sooner than I was led to believe. I hope it's not inconvenient, sir. There are some changes to the schedule. Well, I must be making tracks now. 'Tis time for the inspection. They're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. Asked if I could be present for it myself. It's that policeman who came to tell McGilded he could examine the omnibus again. That's right, an imposter, hired by me. McGilded used his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGilded inside and sent him on a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death. A spine-chilling account indeed. But that wasn't the end of it for me. It was a loose end, you see. A loose end? Yes, I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGilded. Ah, yes. There was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Only because it had been removed from the scene of the crime. When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGilded. This is the first of the 2 discs, the music box you need to play them. Look at that now, what an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for you, young man. What's this? Winterbank's pawnbrokery. Ah, it is a pawnbroker's ticket, so it is. You can use it to redeem an article I've deposited there for you. There's no need to give a name. Just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the watchword. I put a jewel in pawn for you. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. Never heard of pawnbroking being used in quite that way before. Have you not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are very useful places, you know. Each one is like an extremely secure vault. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, it would be in that pawnbrokery somewhere. That on the night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. Yes, to Gina. I remember now. When we first met you at Windybanks that afternoon 2 days ago, I had a description of Miss Lestrade written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From the trial, that pickpocket's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see that. Realized immediately that she was another of McGilded's pawns, that he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket, so I started to make some inquiries. I had a strong suspicion the girl would come out of the woodwork on the redemption deadline. I was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough, she did. All I needed to do was wait until the girl went to Windybanks to redeem the articles. But unfortunately, she redeemed only McGilded's overcoat and the one disc that was in his pocket. The all-important music box, the second disc inside, was missing. Guess it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I could have avoided my nighttime excursion. Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secrets was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGilded was involved. Inspector, we recovered fast. My orders were to recover the stolen information as quickly as possible. So we started gathering the fellow's possessions and examining whatever we could lay our hands on. We had a full-scale investigation going on at the yard, but we had to keep it as quiet as we could. And then, when the inspector here took the disc from me in the pawnbrokery that day, I became nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc were still there in the shop somewhere. So I knew that it was a race against time. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted you to break into the place that same night. With the help of your old friends, the Skulkin brothers. What happened that night in the pawnbrokery, I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching the counter, I'd located the music box I'd sold to McGilded on the shelves of forfeited articles. And the second disc was inside. Yes, I slipped it into my pocket with a very deep sigh of relief. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. What are you doing in my shop? A gunshot rang out in the shop. I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. Broker fired his gun, and the bullet pierced your limb. Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun with me that night, just in case. A third gun. Before I knew what was happening, I'd fired back. The man had already turned to flee. I hadn't intended to fire in his direction, much less kill him. But unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home. It struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge. A sorry, sorry tale. It all took place in the blink of an eye. Imagine Nash and Ringo ever realized what had happened at first. I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That's everything that happened at Windybanks on that wretched night. It's still got questions like in the overall story of like, what's the big issue about Hound of the Baskervilles? Why? There's still something going on with Susato, so it's like, What I find odd, though, is Iris is sort of like balancing herself. She's not on the floor. She's not on a seat. Earlier, I called McGilded a monster. A man who used his wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony. But what you have done is exactly the same. You've become the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded. Yes, I think I have. Well, this has been a long and exhausting trial. However, it would seem that at last we have arrived at the truth. Inspector Gregson, what of Mr. Ashley Graydon? He's been restrained, my lord, and is being escorted to the yard. He'll be charged with the murder of Mr. Windybank and the stealing of government secrets. Very good. And you, Inspector. Regrettably, you will have to face charges yourself. Yes, my lord. Of course. It transpires that you were complicit in helping a criminal escape justice. That fact remains whether or not you were doing so in the line of duty. The crime is a serious one, Inspector. And inexcusable. Now to the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade. Yeah? It is time for the final adjudication. Is the jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Yes, sir. And Garrett Squadron standing by, sir. This is really it now. The last push, the final call, the finishing whistle. My men are ready to deliver their verdicts. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now declare your final decisions to the court.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Boom. Headshot. That's the stuff. I'm off the hook. Finally, Runo, you finally managed to do it. Finally is the word. I really wasn't sure if we'd come out on top for a while there. Susie was right. You're the best lawyer in the world. Miss Lestrade, I am not finished with you yet. Eh? What are you looking at me like that for? Before you start enjoying your freedom, there are certain other crimes to consider, Eh? 2 months ago, in my courtroom no less, you gave false testimony, did you not? In relation to the trial today, not only did you unlawfully enter Windybank's pawnbrokery, you also attempted to abscond with Mr. McGilded's property, it seems. Eh? I've never done nothing of the sort. Of course not. It's not like you were gleefully wearing McGilded's coat in your cell yesterday or anything. Just when I was getting excited about throwing a party for Jenny this evening. And turning our attention to the defense. Determining that, when played together, the music box disc contained a message in Morse code was, well, certainly a most unexpected revelation, counsel. Quite so, my lord. The prosecution was caught entirely off guard. In fact, I think we should applaud my learned friend's courage here today. I propose a toast. To demanding that government secrets be disseminated before the entire courtroom. Huh? Very sorry about that. It was the only way that I could get Inspector Gregson to admit to what he'd done, so... If I may say something on that point. Isn't that... It's, about the sounds produced by the music box before. I do wonder. That wasn't really Morse code at all. What? What are you saying, madam? Oh, well, it's just that I'm really rather fanatical when it comes to Morse code, you see. So much so that the whole world seems to be covered in dots and dashes to me, in fact. Goodness, madam. Unhealthy level of obsession, one feels. But I must say that in my opinion, sounds produced by those 2 discs were nothing more than that. A meaningless series of 2 different tones. What? What? Can that really be? What, they don't represent Morse code as in, like, one tone represents a dot, one represents a dash? No? It wasn't Morse code after all? My lord, the defense would like to listen to the music box again. Are you out of your nut? How many times do I have to tell you? Those contain ministerial secrets, Sunshine. This courtroom is not an appropriate forum to discuss the nature of the government communications. We know McGilded conspired to trade national secrets with our enemies, secrets acquired from Mr. Graydon. Now that the man has admitted to his crimes, we have no need to pursue the matter further. But it's really gonna bother me. Miss Lestrade? Yeah, my lord? That which you have seen today here in this courtroom has been extremely disturbing. Falsified evidence, intimidation, perjury, grim catalogue of depravity. An appalling experience to befall any child. Come on, it ain't nothing I don't see most days in the back slums. I beg your pardon. If you're weak, you pay for it. That's just how life goes. Gina. But look, I reckon I worked something out today. The world ain't fair, but if you want it to change, you gotta start at home. You gotta change how you are yourself. Well, that's a very laudable lesson, I would say. I eagerly look forward to the born-again Miss Lestrade never gracing my courtroom with her presence again. Now, with regard to the murder of Mr. Pop Windybank, proprietor of a pawnbrokery business on Baker Street, if I declare the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, not guilty. Hey, confetti and stuff. That's so dangerous. There's wood in here. I mean... Yay! That is all. Court is adjourned.